back to Cinematic. I'm Ryan Miller. We're talking about Kung Fu movies, and this week we're going to do it a little bit differently. I know in this business of putting out videos into the void, sometimes the void doesn't always talk back, but it did this time, and I'm incredibly excited because I feel like I used to joke around a lot about, meeting somebody on the internet and they're a decent person and you guys make a connection. That age-old story that used to be, I feel like, rare. And now I'm starting to think is actually more common. And in maybe proving that, I wanted to introduce to you guys Mitch from the comments. How's it going, Mitch?
Salute. Good evening, sir. Good evening, sir. Pleasure to thank you very much for inviting me along tonight.
No, thank you. I feel like I put it out into the ether. I was like, people have got to be tired of looking at this particular space, which is like every video I make on the channel, I wanted to get out, a little bit. And then people started coming in, and you were one that was like, I would be more than happy to come on. So I took you up on it. And I'm glad that you're here. It was about 30 minutes before, and I'm like, I haven't really talked to him since, and have only talked to you once before, technically.
This is true. This is true. This is true. I appreciate it. We spoke. Yeah, no worries. Pleasure to be here. Pleasure to be here.
Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you specifically are here in this little show of ours?
I've always had like a real interest in Kung Fu. I think probably since I was about 5 years old. Wow. And there was the old David Carradine series, Kung Fu, that my dad used to let me stay up, watch late. And I kind of remember, it didn't have a massive impact on me, but I was about 4 years old when Bruce Lee died. And in the UK, we got like the afterwave. So they were like sort of Kung Fu crisps, potato chips and things like that, and Kung Fu trading cards. And over the years, it's always been probably the genre of movie that I enjoy most. And more frequently, I think with the advent of Blu-rays, I've kind of really got a passion for watching these old films, particularly Shaw Brothers. And I know that when you started doing your cinematic series, I started like watching and like engaging with you. And I've always, you said like, what film should I watch? And I said, 8 Diagram Pole Fighter. That's the film you want to see. Because I've seen, I'm binge watching Shaw Brothers at the moment. I think I've probably got about 10 films to watch in the Kung Fu wuxia genre, and I've seen like over 300.
And for 10 left, right? Like, and then you will have seen them all, left, literally.
Yeah, 10 left. I would have seen them all. It's been an absolute labor of love and hunting and finding, but I've not, and I doubt the final 10 are going to top 8 Diagram Pole Fighter, because for me, it's easy my favorite Kung Fu film.
Okay, so it is. I was trying to see if I remember correctly. You did say, because I know Lau Kar-leung for sure is your favorite director. I remember you saying that a few times.
Oh, yeah. By a mile.
But 8 Diagram Pole Fighter is at the top of that list.
Yeah. It's right. The top of the pile for me. Yeah.
So yeah, I had to put it on my list as well. And yeah, you have been kind enough to recommend a few. In fact, I would say I think Prodigal Son was the first actual recommendation. Yeah. But since I did watch Prodigal Son, I eventually went back and watched Warriors 2. So you're technically to blame for that one too.
That's a great thing.
And they've been fantastic. Is the other thing too. Yeah. So you're batting. I don't know sports, but perfectly at this point.
Thank you very much.
And then I think I also have My Young Auntie and Knockabout and like one other that are kind of in the backlog now at this point. We'll see if I go back. I've been trying to go chronologically. Obviously, that's why we're here. In fact, in 1984, right? Yes.
Yeah.
So maybe I go back and watch some of those, because almost the sad story is that I'm going to be moving into some certainly less popular or maybe less traditionally good films in the future. So I might need a Shaw Brothers palate cleanser at some point.
I think you will. Ryan, I'm disappointed in you. It's probably the worst thing you can say to someone, isn't it? I'm disappointed.
I know. I flirted with the idea of making this the season break and turning, these other, because we're going to get into, like what essentially the Hollywood system did with Hong Kong action when they decided to
Yeah.
bastardize it for lack of a better word. That's probably about right. Yeah.
Westernized it, probably.
Westernized, sure, if we're being polite, I guess.
Yeah.
So before, yes, let's not even, we'll forget about that for now. Before we get that far into it, let's talk about 8-diagram pole fighter. And I think you've given a decent background. I'm I'm a little bit scared at the amount of legitimacy you're lending to this show right now, but feel free to correct me at any point, obviously, because most of what I get is from a cursory search. Also, if I'm being polite, because I've at least been open about the point that I'm learning as I go. You know, I'm very much a newbie here, so I love it all. Don't get me wrong, but I'm very much open to me not being an expert in the field. So, in fact, you can tell me, because you probably have corrections for Wikipedia at this point that you could.
Oh, no, I wouldn't say. I mean, it is based on a kind of Chinese folklore fiction fact. I mean, the way that it was described to me was it's part of the Generals of the Yang Clan saga. And I can't remember, it's a series of plays and based on something that happened, I think, in the Sung dynasty. I could be wrong.
Nope, you're right.
And the actual story is about, I mean, the film starts off with Lily Lee, who plays the mother, and she consults the Dharma I Ching, and the reading is 7 brothers go forth, 6 return. And she thinks that it's basically a prophecy, and she thinks that 6 of her 7 sons are going to go to battle and come back. But it's based on what happened at Golden Beach when the brothers go forward and they fight Pai Mei. And it's not the Pai Mei from Clan of the White Lotus. It's not the White Browed Priest. So, like, historically in martial arts cinema, there's someone called Pai Mei. And it starts off with this, the beach scene's really abstract. You know, it doesn't look like a beach, does it? And it's basically the Lau Kar Lung family unit. So all of the actors that he had under his banner, you got Sia Ho, you got Wong Yu, you've got his brother Lau Kar Wing. And right at the start of the film, they all pretty much get butchered. Except brother number 5, played by Gordon Liu, and brother number 6, who was played by Alexandra Fushang. And the story is about what happens to those 2 brothers after that massacre.
Just closing all my Wikipedia tabs right now, just one by one.
I think in essence, 8-diagram pole fighter is a film about post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah.
I think it's about PTSD, because I think what happens to brother number 6 is he undergoes a period of mental illness. And the film was fraught with difficulty, because originally I read that they started scripting it and thinking about filming in 1981. But Fushang had a couple of back injuries. I think there's another film called 10 Tigers of Kwantung, which is a Chang Che film, and it's part of the Venom Mob series.
Oh, okay.
And if you ever watch it, it's not very cohesive. It starts off with one group of actors, and then you get another group. And I think what happened was Fushang was injured, and he got other actors to fill in and basically change the story halfway through. And Fushang had an injury to his back in 1981, but during the filming, in July 1983, Fushang was killed in a car crash, and it had a massive impact on the filming. I think that halfway through, Fushang just disappears, doesn't he? He just disappears.
It feels like more than halfway through. And yeah, it's kind of a heartbreaker because, I don't know, again, I'm very loosey-goosey with this, so we're going to skip all over the place in terms of the film, but it's kind of a heartbreaker because he, not only do you feel the anguish coming from him and his character, like the whole, it's, in fact, there's so much to unpack with it because he's being kept in line by his mother a bit. You mentioned the actress's name. I'm very bad about that.
Lily Lee.
The Empress, Lily Lee.
Yeah.
And it's this fantastic back and forth where she's basically keeping him in check. It's like mothering by way of kung fu, like she blocks him at every moment and kind of keeps him in check while he is dealing with all this anguish. So I love that dynamic, number one. But also when he disappears, it's like, oh, I never really get to figure out, I never get to see his triumph over that, essentially. So it is a bit of a heartbreaker, and there is that third dimension to it that just kind of makes it all the more sad, really. But fantastic performance.
Yeah, I think Fu Shang always played the jovial, I can't remember the Cantonese or Mandarin phrase for it, but it was like, it's something that doesn't translate into English, actually, but it's something around him being a brat.
Oh.
If you watch any Fu Shang films, he rose to prominence with Chang Chai, and he was in a lot of the Shaolin cycle films, so Men from the Monastery, Shaolin Temple, Shaolin Avengers, Heroes 2. He's in all of those films.
Crippled Avengers?
So no, he wasn't in Crippled Avengers.
Dang it. I think I might have missed, this might be the first thing I'm seeing him in, actually.
He was like Chang Chai throughout his career, went through periods. So you had the Jimmy Wang Yu Lo Lei period right at the start when they started making films. Then he went on to T Lung and David Chang, so what was known as the Iron Triangle, where it was, he made a bunch of films with those guys. Fu Shang was what was known as his third team. So he started making films with Fu Shang. And Chang Chai kind of moved on from Fu Shang, and Fu Shang started working with Choi Yun and Lau Kar Leong, who was one of his students. So it's right at the end of Fu Shang's career. I think he started in Legendary Weapons of China, and maybe one other Lau Kar Leong film. I can't remember. But it was. I think this film. There's a lot of anger in it, because Lau Kar Leong as a director, everything he does has a sense of comedy to it. If you've seen any of his other films, and Eight Diagram Pole Fighter is a dark film. It's incredibly dark.
Yeah, I can't really think of a moment of brevity, actually, now that you mention it.
No, there's not. There's no humour in it whatsoever. There's nothing. And that, if you've seen, Lau Kar Leong made like 17 films for Shaw Brothers. I think this film and a film called Shaolin Mantis are the only serious films, but this is the darkest by a long way. But I think because it's so dark, and I think what happened to Fu Shang's death, Shaw Brothers was like this microcosm universe. They had this studio at Clearwater Bay where people lived. Let's not forget it, like the dormitories on site. Yeah. And for someone like Fu Shang, who was a really, really big star, to die, it had a massive impact on the filming. And I know that they would give offerings and prayers for Fu Shang every day. I think when Shaw Brothers Studio was shut down, Fu Shang's dressing room remained untouched. It was like this shrine. No one. It was untouched from the moment he died. So they rewrote the script in this. They rewrote the script. Originally, what was going to happen was the Gordon Liu character was going to kill Fu Shang at the end of the film. That was how it was going to end. Yeah,
no joke. I mean, wow, that would have made it the darkest Lau Kar Leong by a mile. Yeah. I feel like.
Yeah.
Wow.
Pick the sweet corn out of that, and they rewrote it. And Gordon Liu's, I think it was Gordon Liu's. It's a standout performance by him. It really is for both the lead actors. Because because of what happens in battle, he kind of is also shell shocked. And he goes away he meets, there's a great scene where he meets Lau Kar Leong in that cave.
Himself, where he's like, I totally caught that.
And he says a quote, and I can't remember, I'm probably going to misquote it, and it's something about, there is no compassion for the fallen, and there is no loyalty to the survivors. And it's my favourite quote from any Kung Fu film, because it's so great. It really encapsulates what war is. And he eventually goes to a Buddhist temple on Mount Wu Tai, and demands to be let in. Like, whereas in, 36 Chamber of Shaolin, he goes there and he's like, Master, please teach me. This guy's belligerent in this film. Fifth Brother goes there and he demands, absolutely demands.
Throughout the whole thing too, I have that down. He's such an interesting character. And you're right, like Gordon Liu is awesome, but just the character himself, like, demands to be a disciple, forces his way into discipleship, like literally. In fact, I wish I would have watched this movie so much earlier, because it now I know the word tonsure. Now I know the whole idea behind the brands. Although I don't know, is that what they're, the 6 dots? I call them brands because it's at the top of the head. He does that all himself. And in just a brilliant touch for the rest of the film, those 6 brands on the top of his head are crooked because he did them himself with the spears. And it's just wonderful because you look at him, you're like, he's forced his way into this discipleship. It shows on his face, on his head. It also shows on his face thanks to Gordon Liu. But it makes him such an interesting character, but also one that I didn't have a problem with this time. And for Shaolin Temple, I kind of did, and it's still a very different story. But to me, one of my strangest criticisms of that was that it felt like the Buddhism about it was a bit loosey-goosey in a way that turned me off. Yeah. Maybe I didn't very well put my finger on it in that actual episode. But in this, for some reason, didn't have an issue, even though he very much, I believe he does take on the principles, and it is in, there's this gorgeous shot where he first walks into the temple, and he's still, anguish on his face, but at this point he's already burned the tip of his spear off, which the Yang family spear is like an icon, like they're known for, I believe that's their weapon. If I had to guess,
that's a really significant part.
Right. So the fact
kind
that
of denouncing his identity, like, I don't want any part of this. I want out of the family.
But I love that symbolism too. Just the fact that he's trying to renounce war as well, but he's just so good. There are numerous times in the film where he goes up against one of the abbots or one of the monks and just completely schools him. Up until the very last or second to last scene where the abbot's like, fine, here you go. Takes off his shroud and gives it to him. He's like it could not be stopped. And I still buy it. Like, I'm still with it, even though he obviously, I think, comes to a crossroads with the new tenets that he's adopting versus his warlike nature. Like that I'm doing it bad, but that whole symbolism and through line in the film is fantastic.
He doesn't care about Buddha. In the film, he doesn't, I've seen Gordon Liu interviewed about it, and he said that his character in the film, Fifth Brother, was never a Buddhist. He was seeking refuge. And it's funny because, I don't want to get into knocking religion, but quite often when someone's feeling low, they will turn to religion. So Gordon Liu comes out of that battlefield and he goes off to a Buddhist temple and says, like, Buddha, take me on. But he doesn't really care about Buddha. He just wants refuge from, and to try and erase his identity. I mean, the chopping off of the spearhead, very, very important. Very important.
And I blew past the actual shot I was trying to mention where he walks into the temple and it's a close-up on the back of him. So it's, maybe chest up, and he envelops the whole frame. And then he kneels quickly, and it racks focus to Buddha. Like he completely disappears into Buddha at that moment when he enters the temple. Yeah. Which I guess hearing you talk about and hearing Gordon Liu talk about the character might be somewhat of a feint, like a fake out maybe, which I think I would agree with too, because I think the movie draws that line. The movie is great at making the stakes matter, but also like all of my guesses for how the movie was going to turn out were completely wrong. Let's put it that way.
I must admit, when I first saw it, I saw it with an English dub, and it's not the way to watch it, because Fu Shang's character in the English dub is so annoying. I didn't feel any empathy towards him because of the voice acting was just so over the top and demanding, and it didn't convey the emotion that that is prevalent with Fushang and the way that he takes that part on. The one thing that I kind of want to mention is I know that you said about when he is schooled by the kind of abbot, yeah? For me, probably the best weapons fight I've ever seen is when he goes up against the abbot with the poles. And they have that scene where they're... Watch that scene again. No one actually hits each other once in that.
Oh, you're talking about the basically second to last fight where he exits the temple afterwards. The one I mentioned where he hands over his shawl afterwards because he's like,
yeah.
Okay.
There's not a single blow. There's not a single blow that connects in that. There's not a single blow that connects.
You're right. Didn't notice, but I believe it.
No.
Because the other thing that's brilliant about that fight, and you're right, that's the standout certainly for this film. And yeah, I mean, I'm going to go back and watch it again, but it's top 5 from everything I've seen so far, just off the top of my head, let's say. But during it, he creates, and this is, 80s Ryan coming through. I was like, oh, he created a yin yang. And I'm like, wait, that's probably, I had plenty of TNC. They got TNC surf shop shirts in the UK. Did those make it over there?
Yeah. I know what you mean anyway.
Okay. But then I looked it up. I was like, okay, what's actually going on? And then I actually also thought about the title, 8 Diagram Pole Fighter. I'm like, I don't even know necessarily what the word diagram is referring to. So you can tell me, or maybe I should just, do you have any insight into that?
It should actually be trigram.
Okay.
And if you look at the flag of South Korea, that is an example of the trigram.
Right.
So if you look at the South Korean flag, it kind of shows you what it should be. And it's like, in America, in the States, the film was called Invincible Pole Fighters.
Yeah, I was going to say it had a pretty tame English translation this time, but
yeah.
I'd still prefer 8 Diagram Pole Fighter, I think, but it wasn't like, Master Killer or anything this time around.
Warriors of what's the one? My favourite, Martial Club, Disciples of Death. Yeah, not a single person dies. Not a single person dies in that film. Not one. Great. Not one. No bloodshed, no death, no nothing.
Gotta love it. Okay, cool. All right, that jives with what I found. The only thing I found was the bagua or bagua, a set of symbols from China intended to illustrate the nature of reality as being composed of mutually opposing forces reinforcing one another. So. And then I guess the actual symbol sometimes is a taijitu.
I don't
know. Yeah, this is
a bit much for me, mate.
This is the downfall of looking stuff up on the internet, is because I know I can find the words, but then I use them wrong every single time. Like there's got to be, somebody's yelling at the screen somewhere, but I'm doing my best.
You're doing a good job, Ryan. You're doing a good job. There was something I noticed the other day, and I had to look it up. When basically the elder of the Buddhist temple goes and sees Lily Lee and my favourite actress ever, Cara Hugh, who plays Ava's sister. He goes there, and on the way back he gets killed, right? And when the Gordon Liu character, when Fifth Brother finds this out, he goes into the temple and everybody's crying. Right, and everybody's really upset because the elder's died. And he says to Philip Coe, the character that he fights with the staff, he says, like, this has happened, and he comes up with this quote, and I had to look it up. I didn't kill Bo Ren, yet Bo Ren still died for me. And it's basically a Chinese idiom. I watched the film again on Sunday. And I had to look it up because I'd never heard that. I'd never noticed that before, because when he says it's in speech marks on the subtitles.
Yeah, I'm curious if we got the same subs now, because I don't even remember that. I mean, there's I feel like I've run into this before too. There's like old subs, and then there's new subs, and then there's dub subs, and there's so I almost never know which ones you're gonna get. Kind of.
Because the other thing that sometimes in the subtitle version and the old subs and also the dub version, the baddies in the film are called the Mongols, Mongolians, right? Mm. And they're not. Historically, they were the Khitans, and it's spelled Khitans, I think.
Yeah, from the Liao dynasty.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That'd be about right. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm like reading the Wikipedia. Don't, I'm not. That's my contribution.
But I think the Caraway was originally not gonna have a part in it, but after
Oh, I read that
Fushang,
too. Yeah.
I
That
read
she.
after Fushang died, and she also stood in Dirty Ho. She's the
Right.
she's the lady that does the puppet fight when like Gordon Liu is using her as a puppet.
Right.
Yeah,
You also said
yeah.
her background was in dance, somewhat.
Yeah, she's also like she was a martial artist as well, and I think she was someone that was on the street like a street beggar.
Yeah, actually, I think I did read that. Her family did
Yeah,
go on hard times when she finally, in fact, there is a little bit of history of her, being a dancer and stuff like that when she was very young. But also,
yeah.
the other thing I found was that she took Northern style weaponry lessons from Baosim Mark. There's got to be a better way to say that. But Donnie Yen's mom is who that
Yes,
was.
yeah,
So
yeah.
the reason I would mention her is because she, like, I don't know if this is from watching, a few of these so far, but there are certainly people that the second they're on screen and the second they start doing choreography, they're worlds apart. Like there's some people where you're like, feels like they learned this for the movie maybe, or didn't study dance or a similar art form beforehand. Kara Y, like, immediately you're like, oh,
Yes,
she's next level. She knows what she's doing
yeah,
big time. So
yeah, yeah.
I feel like she's in My Young Auntie too, right?
Yeah, she was also in a
Okay.
great film called Lady is the Boss as well.
Okay.
It's one of the last, it's one of the 80s Lau Kar-leung films where, again, people say it's a very similar plot, except My Young Aunt is set sort of, I don't know, over maybe 70, 80 years ago, and Lady is the Boss was set in the 80s, which is only 40 years ago.
Oh, okay. Oh, I might have seen a clip from that as well then.
Yeah,
There was, when I was looking her up, there was, a bunch of those compilation clips that people are put up on YouTube
yeah.
and stuff like that. But yeah, she's great. In fact, while we're on the subject of women in film, because I recently spoke about this. In fact, the reason I know about My Young Auntie at all is because I had asked you in the comments if there was somewhere I could go to kind of restore my faith in the genre, because I noticed as time was going on that women were becoming less and less present in the films, let's say. And this was honestly a breath of fresh air. This movie, A Diagram Pole Fighter itself, is, I think, a brilliant representation. I think it's got strong female characters. I mean, it starts out with, you mentioned the Empress, Lily Yu?
Lily Lee.
Lily
Lily Lee.
Lee. I'm getting better. Well, it's funny because every time I recognize somebody from another movie, I get excited because I'm like, okay, I'm starting to become familiar with the stable, because I'll bring it all back. This movie starts with a brilliant credit sequence where it's just moving left to right throughout all the brothers, and I'm like, okay, I know that one, and by the time we're done, I think I was 3 out of 7, and I was like, well, I feel like that's about where I'm at with kung fu movies.
That's a good shout. A good shout. Yeah, yeah.
But she is this brilliant mother, like I mentioned, especially to Alexander Fusheng's character. But also, like, I think the first scene we see her in, her father comes in and kowtows to her. Like she is the boss, for lack of a better term, now that you mention it.
Yeah.
But also lends the right amount of gravitas to that character throughout. And I would extend that to her daughters, that both, like, none of them ever seem subsumed. At the very end, during the rewrite, I guess, when Kara Y is basically saved, she kind of becomes a damsel in distress there towards the end, but it's after commanding the screen for 3/4 of the movie. So
The scene after they shot after Fushang, because Fushang was on his way for a night shoot in that film.
oh,
That's when the car crash
when the
happened.
car crash happened. Oh,
Yeah.
wow, okay.
Yeah. And the night shoot is when kind of the bit outside where Lily Lee is and the family are, and you've got that scene where they're like taking out vegetables because the abbot goes there, the elder goes there and demands food that's cooked by the woman in the house, and then after that you've got the scene, and that's the scene where I think that was the scene where Fu Shang was off to shoot.
Yeah, I don't think he's. No, he is in that scene, isn't he? Like he comes out and starts to object, and mom has to hold him back again.
Yeah, but there's a night scene after that. There's a night scene outside, and like the film's basically shot on sound stages. There's hardly any external stuff. There's a scene where they're outside. There's a scene where Cara weighs on a horse.
Right.
When she rides off to the restaurant at the bottom of the mountain, and those are the only external scenes.
Oh, that
the rest
was
of
actually outdoors. Oh, okay. Yeah, you almost don't notice because the Shaw Brothers sets I feel like are kind of legendary for, they can make a set look like outside and they can make outside look like a set. So it's just by the time you're done, which is which. Yeah, they're really good. Like strangely enough, I feel like Lau Kar Lung, himself included, who again has that scene, still outdid himself. It's, in fact, I can't remember if I mentioned this before in this series, but growing up, and we have this in common too, listening to a lot of punk rock music, and pretty much the common criticism, I guess there's lots of common criticisms, but when it comes to that style of music is that, it all sounds the same, and listen to it for a few months and you start to notice, maybe even a month, you start to notice what the actual differences are, and you could see movies, you could see 17 Lau Kar Lung movies maybe, if you watch them in the same day, and be like, well, they all seem the same. But they aren't. Yeah, right. They're wildly different. And it's, to me, surprising how often he does seem to kind of outdo himself. And I would say in this film, again, and I haven't seen them all by any stretch, not even all the Lau Kar Lung films, he's outdone himself again. How, after everything he's done so far, everything I've talked about so far, he figured it out.
I don't know if with this was the last of his Shaw Brothers films, because I think Disciples of the 36th Chamber was released after. I'm not sure if that was shot before.
Oh, okay. Yeah, good point. It was released after. That's still coming up for me, but
yeah. But this seems like the last film. And it was definitely the last film that Cara Wei did for the studio.
It was the last for Alexander Prushing, obviously, but also for her too. Yeah. But she's still around. She does a lot of. I mean, she doesn't do action films anymore. I read somewhere that she said it was too hard on her body, and she's. I believe her.
Probably,
Especially after. In fact, good segue. Let's talk about the final fight in this film, which blows my mind again, both in how I didn't guess anything, because I feel like I have a one-armed swordsman stuck in my head, where there's kind of the rock paper scissors aspect to it, where one weapon beats another, and they had a little bit of that going on here, where you said it, Catan family, like their weapon is this pole with like a spring in it that wraps around. Yep. It would wrap around their spears, and that's how their spears would get stuck at the head, which I thought was also a nice touch. That's how I thought. Like I thought I was guessing the movie.
I totally agree. Yeah.
Now that the spearhead's not there, it'll just slip through. Like that's how they're going to solve it. It's not how they did it at all. They did it with like a knockdown, drag out in this inn surrounded by coffins that were hiding a few different people. But also the monks show up to kind of save the day. So it's this down and out pole fight, barroom brawl is not putting it properly.
Dentistry.
This is the teeth one. That might be my last note. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like, if you have teeth, like maybe mouth issues, you could
it's fair warned about this one. But it's not for the faint-hearted. I don't even want to think about how long it took to shoot that last scene. I was looking at things on YouTube, as you do, and I've got a clip I'm going to send you, and it's them. Basically, it's an outtake of them filming part of that final fight scene.
Oh, fantastic!
And just I mean, you can't. It's all in like I think it's all in Cantonese. But just when they go cut and go back again and cut and go back again, just watching, like, when the camera doesn't cut away, watching the length of some of those takes with how many different weapons are flying around and how many people, and the fact it's not just all on the ground, it's on 3 tiers.
Yeah.
That's
so
bonkers.
3 tiers of coffins. And
it's absolutely insane.
It's got to be the heaviest, because usually the weapons work, I feel like I haven't seen much that's like, maybe 4 people are involved at the most. And this is a room full of pole fighters. It almost feels like somebody went up to Lau Kar Lung on a dare and was like, pole fighting's kind of boring, right? And he was like, is it? And then he made this, and history was changed.
And if you watch some of the later, I don't want to run the man down too much, but if you watch some of the later Venom mob films, and I'm a big Venoms fan, right? Big Venoms fan. But if you watch the later Venoms films, sometimes it looks like someone's waiting for their turn to get hit. Although there are lots of people around, it hasn't got the same complexity of movement that... I mean, for me, it's my favourite final fight ever in any film I've ever seen.
I've
never seen it. I've never seen anything to top.
And when you mentioned Venom Mob, you're not running down the guy too much. You're speaking of Chang Che, and I will say though, and I also don't want to run him down. Go back. I have plenty of episodes where I'm loving those films, and I think the last one, Kid with the Golden Arm, might have been. I feel like I got his number a little bit. He feels like he made the Fast and Furious movies for his day in a way. And that's going to sound it's more negative to some people certainly, but I think with this one, I'm ready with you to say that Lau Kar Lung's, I mean, I'm going to say at the top of my list. I came into movies in the 90s, so I'm going to have that nostalgia for Jackie Chan and Sammo, as I've also talked about already, but I would put Lau Kar Lung above Chang Che at this point. If you forced me to, certainly. It's almost like he's almost dead center in the middle of King Hu and Chang Che or something like that. Lau Kar Lung is, like he's still got the look, even if it's on a Shaw's set or whatever. King Hu, I'm not going to say he's approaching some of what he did because those are just kind of bonkers beautiful. But I feel like I get a little bit more out of the subtext of a Lau Kar Lung film. Like we talked about with the burning off of the tip of the spear, or some of that actual direction where the image of Gordon Liu is subsumed by the Buddha statue immediately. And I would in fact add to that the pole fighting. I feel like not just what the Empress does with her dragon cane, which is wonderfully symbolic and iconic as well, but what they do in that final fight with, hearing you talk about how Gordon Liu said that the character does not care about Buddhism, this still feels like more of a Buddhist movie than I think I've seen, so it's got that depth to it. I think Lau Kar Lung is good at instilling depth where Chang Che might not be.
I think a couple of things I've kind of noticed from watching Lau Kar Lung films is he cares about martial arts. He cares about the practice. There's a lot of his films focus on master-disciple relations. He cares a lot more about gender than a lot of other directors do, particularly Chang Che. Like, some of the later Chang Che films, there aren't any females in at all. Like, look at Five Shaolin Masters. There's not a single female actress in that film at all. So there's a lot more, there's a lot more depth to, I think, Lau Kar Lung films.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, I'm with you now. So if no movie has done it so far for anybody else tuning in for these, gotta watch 8 Diagram Pole Fighter. Yeah. And I gotta also shout out maybe my favorite quote from this one, and I'll be curious if the subs match up on this one for you, but it's when the monks do finally come in to kind of save the day. Gordon Liu is trying to rescue Karawai, and probably wouldn't make it, let's say. Some of the imagery behind that weapon I mentioned with the spring and the pole is fantastic, because it's so far, whenever it wraps around something, that thing is done. that thing will die is basically what it comes down to. So when it starts wrapping around Gordon Liu, you're like, oh, this is it. And because this has done such a good job of, I'm not above thinking Gordon Liu's gonna die in this thing. Like I just don't know, and the stakes are that high. So when that starts to happen, and I think that's about when the monks come in and kind of break everything apart and pretty much save the day. But when the abbot kind of sidles up to Gordon Liu, and Gordon Liu says, Abbot, you're breaking your vows. And he says, no, we're only chasing away wild wolves, which is a callback to some of the instruction he received in the temple. Again, makes it work so much better for me in 2 lines than a movie like Shaolin Temple did for the entirety of the film, in a way.
I think this was one of only a couple of films, I could be wrong, that Lau Kar-leung actually assisted with writing the script for. I probably got that wrong. And I can't remember the other one. It might have been Legendary Weapons of China. I could be wrong.
I mean, it would be a first. that you were wrong, I would say, but he is one of the writers credited on IMDb, at least. Let's do
Who was
Hong
the other
Kong
writer?
MDB. Oh, it was, according to IMDb.
Was it Ni?
It was Kwang Ni.
Yeah. He was incredible. He wrote like 400 scripts for Shaw Brothers.
Wow. There's so much to mine. I mean, there's so many Shaw Brothers films, period. I'm going to feel lucky if I get through all of Lau Kar-leung's, which is like a manageable, I think 17, you said, right?
17, yeah.
Sounds like
those are the ones he
godsend.
made for sure. He made some after.
And that's right, because didn't he do like Drunken Master 2 or 3 or...
Yeah, he did Drunken Master 2.
Okay.
And he did Drunken Master 3 as well.
Oh, wow.
He did Drunken Monkey, Tiger on the Beat 1 and 2, Aces Go Places 5, I think.
Wow.
I'm really struggling now. Oh, and he also did the film with Jet Li. Martial Arts of Shaolin.
Oh, that might be on the list. I'll have to check. Yeah, I didn't have as many Jet Lis as I thought I did, but after Shaolin Temple, I'm feeling okay about what I got. I feel like I'm back.
That's not my favorite. That's an okay Jet Li film.
It is. It's fine. I don't know. And he's very good in it. I feel bad for mentioning anything in a bad way, but I could never say anything as brutal as I will hang you until you bleed from all 7 orifices. I should mention as well, which is one of the most effective threats I've ever heard, but also in this. Can you hear me? No? Did I cut out?
No, I was just counting the orifices. Sorry.
Which is what you do naturally when a threat like that comes across. But yes, I winced at that when it came across in the film. I'm like, oh, that's good, dude. Give him what he wants. Great film, man. Thank you once again, and thank you for hanging out and just for being around, for offering up, for every comment you've made, and for all the back and forth we've had. Again, it's been a delight. I love to learn, and I feel like I've only learned from your comments and contributions. So
it's a pleasure, mate. A pleasure to support your channel, and I probably won't comment on this particular upload.
Is that too? No, I don't know, man. You say that, but then we're gonna watch and be like, no, I'm gonna issue some corrections of my own. And
hey, Ryan, who's that loser you're talking to this week? Get him off. Get him off. Boo. Boo.
Well, I cannot make any promises as far as that goes, because while I am moving in a regrettable direction, perhaps. I do have much more to talk about. In fact, in that legendary first conversation and only other conversation that we've had, we just went on for a good 30, 40 minutes just about everything and all those movies. So I feel like we could do one of those in the future too, as well. So
yeah, definitely. I'll definitely be up for it. Be a pleasure.
Right. Okay, sounds good. So for everybody else, well, for you too, Mitch. Gosh, good gosh.
Thank you very much, sir.
Next week we are going to do, if I remember correctly, kind of a left field as well. This is one that I only put on the list because of the people involved. I haven't had a single recommendation about it so far, so actually you probably could help out with this. It's Drunken Tai Chi, a Yuen Woo-ping film with Donnie Yen in it. So
I've not seen that. I've not seen that.
wow,
I can't. No,
that
no,
is interesting.
can't comment.
Now I'm intrigued. It's either that bad or that hard to find.
You're talking. There's a lot of stuff out there. There's a
That's
lot
true.
of stuff.
That
out
is
there.
true. Yes,
It really is.
the
It really
perennial
is.
problem. There is just an unlimited
Yeah.
amount of these.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, I appreciate it if you came back for that in spirit, if not in eyeballs at the very least, and that's what we'll be doing. I always say next week, but it'll be next time because
Yeah.
I've got how many irons in the fire over here. So, thanks again, and we'll see everybody later.
Cheers, Ryan. Take care, buddy.